Hello everybody, I am here. We're doing the vertices of a triangle, which we're given the coordinates. So coordinate A is 12, 16. B's coordinate is -8, -4, and C's coordinates are -16, 5. It asks us to find out what the perimeter of the triangle is. This is round to the nearest 10th. So what I'm going to do is we are going to use the distance formula. As you can see, that is written right there, x2 minus x1 squared. And then you're going to add y2 minus y1 squared. And we're going to have to do that a couple of times here in order to find out the distance of each of these things. Now you could obviously draw this in a diagram, but I'm going to show you guys how to do this. So what I did was I started off with A and B. So I'm going to start with those two coordinates and find the distance out between the two of them. So I labeled A's 12 coordinate, the x coordinate, the x1, and I labeled B's x coordinate x2. And then I did the y coordinate for this, which is 1, and then y2 for this one. So now all I'm going to do is plug these in for what we need to solve for. So again, I'm using this formula right here. All I'm doing is plugging in. X2 I just said was -8. So I'm going to plug in the -8 right here. Minus the x1, which is 12. And then I'm going to do the same thing. So -4, that's a y2, minus the y1, which is 16. Now, these end up both being negative numbers, but when you square them, they're going to end up positive. So -8 minus 12 ends up giving me a -20, but we are going to square that. Notice that I'm putting this inside of a set of parentheses. You do need to make sure that when you're doing this on a calculator, that you are putting it in the parentheses. Otherwise, it's not going to calculate correctly, and you're going to end up with a negative number. So you need to make sure that it looks like that. And then when you hit equals, you can see it becomes positive. A negative times a negative is going to be positive. These should always be positive answers. Now I'm going to do the same thing over here. So that's obviously 400. And then we're going to do the same thing over here. Again, -4 minus 16 is going to be a -20 as well. And so you're going to have 400 plus 400, and then you're going to square root that. And when I square root 800, square root of 800, get to roughly 28.3. We're going to round that up because we're doing to the nearest 10th. So the distance between A and B is going to be roughly 28.3 units. So that's the first part. Now I'm going to do that same thing, but with these other two pieces. All right, so just as a little quick thing I did was I took B and C's coordinates. I labeled these already. So these are going to be my x1 and my y1 this time. My y2 and x2 are going to be these two this time. So now all I've done was I plugged them into the equation. So again, x2, -16, minus the -8, which is my x1. Don't forget, this is always minus. So if this is a negative number like this one is, and so is the 4, you have to make sure you put minus a negative. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to do the same thing. So my y2 was 5 minus my y1, which is -4. We're going to go through, solve that, and give me a second, and I'll show you what the product for the end of result is on this one. All right, so here's all the math done. As you can see, when I substitute everything in and solve, I end up with a -8. I square it, which gives me a positive 64. This results in a 9 squared, which ends up being 81. Add those two together, you get 145. And then when I square rooted that answer, as you can see, my answer was roughly 12.04. So I'm going to round that to just 12 units. So now I know part B, length B to C, what the distance is for those. And then you can just either, if you wanted to, we're going to do that last one. Just bear with me, and I'll show you how that one's going to look. All right, for the last one, I took these set of coordinates, so A to C, and I use these as my 1s, these as my 2s, plugged them into the equation one more final time so I could find out the distance between A and B. So I plugged in -16 minus the 12, that's your x2 minus x1, square that. Then you're going to do your y2 minus your y1, square that. Again, that's these two numbers. And when I do all the math, again, this is negative 28 squared, which gives me 784. The other one is going to give me negative 11, squared, which is going to give me 121. Add those two together and then square root that final answer, which gives me roughly 30.1 units. So now what I have are right here, I just gave you guys kind of the rundown on this. So from A to B, the length is 28.3 units. From B to C, the length is 12 units. And then from A to C, it's 30.1. So all I'm going to do is find the perimeter to the nearest tenth and just add those together. So 28.3, do that, plus 12, and then plus our final 30.1 gives me a final total of 70.4 units. So my answer for this perimeter is 70.4, and that is how we use the distance formula to solve something like this. And if you want more questions like this, find them on my YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok at U1Algebra. All of these are located in the Pythagorean Theorem playlist. Don't forget to like, share, save it for later, follow me for more, and I will see you soon.